Hey, what's up? This is Darker Days Radio number 45. I am, of course, one of your hosts, Mike, and tonight I'm joined by Chris.
Hello.
And I'm also joined by, straight from Australia, Peter Marshall.
Hey, how you doing?
You sound a little low energy there, Peter.
Oh, just slightly. Went to a wedding last night, and there was copious amounts of drinking because we're in Australia, and yeah. And I'm also rubbing up against daylight savings as well.
Oh, right on. And you still woke up for Darker Days Radio. We appreciate it.
Still woke up. It's 8 a.m. local time, and I woke up on a Sunday.
Darker Days, that's across 3 continents? Possibly so.
It might be. I don't know. Actually, probably not, because I remember back in the day with my man Adrian. I remember he would do some of them, and I think it when you had Mike and Vince. I think.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No. It was Dark Days Radio episode number 16, talking about Changeling the Dreaming, where they had Chris in America, Mark was up in England, and we also had Adrian in Australia.
Yeah, and Vince as well. Yeah, so that was right. So
yeah, sorry,
that was Vince, not Mark. I plead hungover, Your Honor.
Right on. Yeah, so this is gonna be kind of a weird episode because I'll just take the blame for not really preparing well. So, news, we'll cover that next episode. We're gonna have one like a week or so talking to David Hill anyway.
Yeah, I think the only news to really say is go to the White Wolf blog. There's some stuff, certain things being okay by CCP right now, like God Machine Chronicle, because I actually went to the blog, and various things are in the works. Like the latest Mummy books coming out. So obviously the main thing to say, the Mummy virtual box set is available on Drive-Thru RPG.
Nice.
So if you haven't got it, go get it. If you haven't got it, when you go get it, use our ID and give us some gamer credit, because it'd be nice to give away a prize, which we may talk about at the end of the show on what the competition is, or I think when we actually think of a good enough competition, we'll just make it available on the. It'll be on the blog or on the feed, and people can get a free copy of. I think we're going to try and make it to be Mummy the Curse, an actual copy of the box set. Yeah, because we've got a shit ton of gamer credit there. So. Yeah, that's about it, really. I can think news-wise.
Yeah, I also know that Hunter's Hunter 2 is apparently chugging along quite well. I've just received my my backer survey, so for the shipping stuff and for what name I want on the special thanks. So that's quite good. And apparently, let me bring this up here. We're out recruiting a lot of awesome people for the fiction anthology.
Such as Richard Dansky.
That's right, Rich Dansky's back.
Yeah, it's definitely good to hear.
Did also Werewolf 20th Anniversary hit general release? I can't remember because I received a reviewer voucher for it, so I've not downloaded it yet to read through.
I don't think it has. I mean, I have my backer copy, and we're going to have to cover that.
Yeah, it's mostly I've got it obviously ready for when it's ready to be released. I think that's more the case.
Yeah, I usually get it like a couple weeks in advance. But no, W20 is not released for the general public yet.
Cool. Okay. Well, that's something that I'll have to obviously read, and we'll have to review the shit out of.
Yeah. What else happened? I think also, if for reeling it back a bit for V20, I know that I think the technology has finally caught up with the vision, and I think we can now get a 1-volume version of the print-on-demand copy.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, so you can now get sort of the super sexy, absolutely massive version. I'm kind of happy with my 2-volume version because I think it's a little bit easier to reference on the fly because you're not pouring through a 500-page monster. But I still kind of want the 1-volume edition. So yeah, it will be another case of yeah, it will be another case of shut up and take my money.
Right on.
Yeah.
And the other cool thing, since we're kind of just doing the news anyway, is that they have the updated schedule, which does mention that Dark Ages Darkening Skies is going to be released, which is one of the canceled books from the Dark Ages line from way back in 2004. So, right on. I'm sure Black Hat Matt was definitely pushing for that, and it's cool to see it finally be released. Excellent. Like a year from now.
Well, it's on the horizon. Who knows? We may finally get the Changeling Knockers book. It was Knockers, yeah.
Maybe we'll finally get print on demand Dark Ages Fae. Maybe. Been asking for that for like 2 years now.
Man can dream.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess that's it for the impromptu news segment. And Secret Frequency, we don't need to do that either, do we?
I know. One thing I'm definitely going to try and do, mostly with my wife's help as well, is because we went on holiday, a very quick holiday to Amsterdam, and it'd be interesting. And there's obviously a lot of great history to that city, and we didn't really get a chance to delve into it that much because we were there for a gig, go see some Hertz performing. So it'd be nice to actually try and find something specific to it, because Dam Square apparently is very, very haunted. That's right in the city centre next to the palace.
That's Sam in the background.
A 13th century highwayman called Black Matthew. So yeah. Okay, so we'll find that for a future show, and we'll go into it because just because that's what I do. And of course, Amsterdam has the faint smell of weed smoke everywhere you go. Faint, I say. It's fucking everywhere.
And smell of freedom.
And obviously the red light district's a very weird thing to walk through during the day, seeing scantily clad women dancing windows. Very strange. But anyway, that's the plan for a Secret Frequency in future.
No, we're unbooking my holiday.
Yeah, well, go sooner rather than later, because they're trying to change the law that only locals can actually smoke in the cafes there. But there's obviously people don't want it passed because it's too much of a tourist, money trap.
Doing something that will get you, 7 to 10 back in your home country. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't get away from that.
That's cool. Anyway, so let's move on to our first segment of the night, which is going to be me just talking about PAX East 2013. It was pretty sweet. This is my first time being an enforcer at PAX, but I've been to every single PAX East, and since I was slinging around my Darker Days business card everywhere, I thought it'd be a cool thing to just kind of like review the convention here on the show. And I know, Peter, you are pretty pumped for PAX Oz.
Yeah. Australia being Australia, we don't often get that sort of thing. We have sort of the local convention scene, which, I'll be honest with you, is a little bit of a fleece. It's a little bit of, here, pay $20, now stand in line for 2 hours to pay another $40 for a quick, for a quick session with a celebrity. And, it's not spectacular. But from what I've heard about PAX, where it's much more interactive, where there's much more things to do rather than just sort of, stand around and wait and pay. I've heard that there's just a whole bunch of spectacular things to see and do, so I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Right on. Do you have any basic questions about PAX? At least from my experience with PAX East.
Well, sure, and I think this will probably do for some of the international listeners. Okay, so PAX East, which city specifically is that?
That's in Boston, Massachusetts.
Cool. All right, and I suppose so. You mentioned that you were an enforcer there. What exactly does an enforcer do? The
enforcer is basically the convention staff. So your core job, for every single enforcer, is the safety of everyone. You're not really going to be, roughing up criminals or anything, but just want to make sure that people aren't running around and people are having a good time as well. And there's tons of different jobs. You could just be a guy working at an info booth. There's an entire tabletop section with its own enforcers, so they find people games to play and just make sure the different store owners and the also game companies that show up are having a good time. They have everything they need. There are, for example, I was one of the satellite theater staff, so what I basically did was make sure people got into line and in an orderly manner entered the theater for the different panels that were going on, and also just trying to like keep people entertained a little bit, I guess, and like help people out as they're walking by. And there's also one group is line entertainment. So what they do is they just wander around, just entertaining people that are standing in lines, because that can be a little boring, especially for the really giant lines.
It sounds like the tasks that you had to cover are very similar to what I had to do when back in the day when I worked for Games Workshop. I've worked a games day, and they're hard. And you're either like helping people out and directing them to things, or you're entertaining them while they're waiting to get onto these giant gaming boards of doom. And I can imagine it must have been a very long days at PAX East then, Mike.
Not really. It was pretty much the best thing ever. It was freaking awesome.
That's good then. That's good to hear.
Awesome.
They treat you well then.
They treat enforcers extremely well. So we're very. I was very grateful. Yeah, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun just talking to all these different people, seeing what they were dressed up as, and the other enforcers I was with were awesome. And you're pretty much always with someone else. So when it was kind of slow, you had people to talk to, that kind of thing. So it was great.
Now you got to talk to a fair few sort of. I mean, the celebrity factor is kind of always there, but that for me, that's never really sort of been a big deal. It's like, yep, you can go stand in line to see Will Wheaton from a distance. But for me, it was always more a case of no, I want to meet the professionals. I want to meet the creators and the designers and the writers of the various different things that I'm into. So, who did you get to speak to from sort of a game design standpoint? Anyone cool?
Definitely. I mean, I don't go to a whole lot of conventions, but my experience at PAX East is that everyone's very approachable.
Yeah.
So, for example, I was over in the Catalyst Game Labs area, and I just, stopped Randall Bills for a second because someone said I should talk to him, and ended up discussing Shadowrun for a good 15 minutes and got quite a bit of information from him regarding that. Talked to some people that were kind of slinging their own games, live indie RPG people. Specifically, nice. I talked to Joshua A.C. Newman for a bit, because I was picking up Mobile Frame Zero, which he finally released. I backed the Kickstarter for that, so that was pretty cool.
That's the mech game, which is based around using Lego, right?
Yes, it is. It's pretty awesome.
Nice one. I know it's not sort of really the focus of us because we're more sort of World of Darkness, but I would argue that I think a lot of us are actually Shadowrun fans. So can you talk a little bit more about what you spoke about with the game designer for Shadowrun?
Yeah, so Randall Bills is he's more just like the general creative manager over at cool. Catalyst. I believe Jason Rome is the lead designer for Shadowrun, or maybe Jason Hardy. Well, I don't remember who it is, but he wasn't there at PAX, and Randall was, so I talked to him. And they have a lot going on for Shadowrun because the 5th edition is going to be coming out this summer. So that was a big thing. And the main point he wanted to get across was that they're going to be massaging the mechanics so that they enhance the story more. Shadowrun's had an issue with having tons of like little mini games for all these different aspects, like going into the Matrix when you're hacking, or little mini games with your rigger and that kind of stuff.
That was always the factor of I'm going into the Matrix. Okay, everybody else, chill while we do the Matrix stuff.
Right on.
So yeah, that's always been a problem. Same thing with Cyberpunk 2020 had that as well, where it was I want to play the Netrunner, and it was okay, you be the Netrunner. So while everybody else is doing stuff, you kind of chill out, and then now it's time to Netrun. So everybody else chill out while we Netrun. Didn't quite work.
Yeah, and Shadowrun 4th edition tried to fix some of that with the augmented reality. Yeah, but it didn't really work out. The rules weren't all that great. So that's one of the things they're trying to do. So that's kind of the big release this summer, but they also have a bunch of like side products that are going to be coming out in the next couple of years. So
I'm really excited about some of those because was specifically what was the one I was after. The Gangers. There's apparently going to be a Gangers miniatures game that I read about. So me and my gaming group were recently kind of reminiscing about Necromunda. And how much we wouldn't mind playing that again. So we were like, hang on.
Necromunda's a fucking classic game. Yeah, I miss that a lot. Of course, if you're going to play Necromunda, there is only one other thing which, at one point, the rules were completely free, and I think you mostly find them to download because obviously at one point Specialist Games made all the rules easy to download. So, and I have a copy. I don't know the legality now of distributing it, but when I got it from Specialist Games, so Gorka Morka, which of course was Necromunda with orcs and vehicles, which is a hilarious game.
I remember that. That was a hoot.
It was brilliant.
It was a hoot, that one.
Oh yeah, I had an orc who had his he got injured, and I think he had a chest injury. And you take him because like Necromunda. So people, listeners that've not played it, if you're aware of like Warhammer 40,000, Necromunda is set in a one of these hive cities that's like these giant, mile-tall cities that has thousands and thousands of people in, and of course you have gang warfare. Gorka Morka built on that idea with the orcs, who are space orcs, and they crashed on a planet. Very what's the name of the film? Very Mad Max style, and it had orky vehicles. And when your guys get injured in either of the games, you take them to the doctors to get something done to them, and you find out how to fix that injury, and you get cybernetics. Orcs being a little random, the doctor often doesn't do what you want done. So my poor orc, I think, had a chest injury and came back with his legs replaced with tracks, which was awesome. So he would be bundled off the back of a truck and nab stuff. And it was ironic because he died by getting run over by an actual truck. But anyway, so
what was the phrase? It was something like, "We fixed you up and now you're well-odd."
Yeah. So we're expecting, so Mike, on that theme, we're expecting something Shadowrun-esque?
Yeah, Randall specifically said, yeah, it's going to be like Necromunda, so that's what we're going to expect. It's a game about gangers fighting each other in the independent city of Seattle. Not really independent, but that lone city of Seattle. And you mentioned that the initial box has the Halloweeners and the Ancients, and my Shadowrun knowledge is not as great as it should be, but I believe the Ancients are a group of elf gangers, and I believe the Halloweeners are a bike gang.
Cool. Sold.
Do we have any idea of who's going to be doing the miniatures for them?
I didn't ask. Currently, Ironwind Metals makes pewter miniatures. They re-released the Ralpartha pewter miniatures for Shadowrun. So that's possible, but in the past, Catalyst Game Labs has done its own plastic miniatures through the guys who also did the War Games Factory miniatures.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how they released like the recent Leviathan's miniatures, which is another game that I tried out. I tried the demo of for a bit in the Catalyst area.
Do we have any kind of like expectation on kind of like what the rules for that kind of war game is going to be like? Because I have no experience with Shadowrun because, to be honest, quite frankly, the settings never really kind of grabbed me. I think that's just coming from a Games Workshop point of view, where I've always had mashups of lots of things like space orcs and so forth. So, you know, Shadowrun never interested me for that kind of setting. I like things that were rather agnostic of like orcs and elves for my cyberpunk. But do you expect like the war game to build off the same rules as the roleplay game, much in the same way like Iron Kingdoms has done the same with War Machine?
I'm not sure. So first off, he did mention that the rules are currently in their like second play test, so he wasn't really talking about the mechanics that much. But I can tell you that Shadowrun is basically like the World of Darkness system. Well, actually, World of Darkness was based off of Shadowrun.
Yeah.
So Shadowrun uses dice pools of d6s to find successes. Yeah. And there's also a chance that you may glitch, which is the same thing as a botch.
Yeah.
I would guess probably not, because they'd want to simplify it and streamline it, so I don't think they'd have you rolling dice pools for each ganger.
No, that would be slow. Cool.
We'll see how that go. It is their second crack at doing a miniatures game, because I remember back in sort of about maybe 10 years ago, there was a Shadowrun Duels game, which was a collectible figure game, and that one I think you were swapping in and out dice and whatnot. So
yeah,
I hear a sigh. So what did you try to get into Shadowrun Duels and it failed horribly, or?
Oh God, no.
The thing was, it was a cool concept. It's just I think the production costs were really huge, because I mean they weren't miniatures, they were action figures, and they were about I think something. I think they were 9-inch figures. They were absolutely lovely. It was. I know a
Yeah.
bunch of my friends still sort of just have them as
I
cool
know. I
toys
know that was
scattered
the
around the
miniatures you're
desk.
talking
Yeah,
about now. Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it was.
I saw
They
those
were,
up
they
front.
were cool figures. I just don't know how much of a game it was.
Mm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think now is kind of the most interesting time to see more companies like come into like wargaming because like there are loads and loads of really interesting looking war games coming out currently, and I think that's partly because you're seeing the strength of with the strength of something like Privateer Press with War Machine, like they're now on like 10 years of it. They've kind of like I think they blew open a big hole which basically said, there is other stuff out there than Games Workshop. And given Games Workshop's shaky track record in the last few years, I think people are looking for interesting, viable alternatives. And to think there could be a good kind of gang warfare with experience analogous to Necromunda when Games Workshop has basically taken what was a well-received game, yet for them wasn't a moneymaker, and
Yeah.
kicked it to the side of the road. Screw them. Let some people have another crack at it and integrate it with their role play. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wicked.
The thing that I've kind of found, this is just sort of in my personal experience. A lot of my, it's once again we've gotten older and we're not so much money poor, but we're time poor. And
Yes.
the thing that I found is like a decent game of Warhammer 40 or whatnot. That will how long will that take you? That will take you what? Christ, maybe 4 hours or whatnot, 4 or 5 hours
To set up, play, and break down. Yeah.
Exactly, yes. So something that you can play, get in and out of there, maybe in say 2 or 3 hours. So if something which is smaller scale, like say Necromunda, or we're finding ourselves play a lot of board games, and apparently Shadowrun's also jumping into that one as well. There's apparently a board game coming out, so my sort of fingers crossed if it's not something too huge that once again it's something we can sort of set up, play, and get out of there in about sort of 3 to 4 hours. That should be really good.
Yeah, Randall didn't have much to say about Hostile Takeover, the Shadowrun board game. He said it's kind of Lords of Waterdeep inspired, so that probably means it's going to be a quick game.
Played a bit of Lords of Waterdeep, and that game is fantastic.
Yes, but he mentioned that Hostile Takeover is like a couple years down the road, so we'll have to see what happens with that.
All right, fair enough.
And I think that's pretty much it for Shadowrun. He also mentioned that the print novels are going to be returning for Shadowrun, including omnibuses for like reprinting classic novels, and then also just new stuff.
Excellent. Bam.
Very exciting, yeah. So definitely a lot going on with Catalyst. The other thing that I didn't really talk to Randall about this, but I do know that Battletech has some stuff coming up for a new time period, which is beyond the Dark Age. So that's going to be pretty exciting for mech heads like myself.
Oh, really? Cool. Any details on that one, or was just it'll just be beyond Dark Age?
It's beyond Dark Age. I think it's like 100 years after. So
okay, fair enough.
I haven't researched it that much, nor did I talk to anyone. I was apparently speaking to Herb Bees, who's the Battletech developer, and I just didn't realize it. So missed opportunity for me.
Yeah, I had a similar experience when I was at AussieCon, where I was just talking to this guy who I just thought was a regular attendee, and later on I found out, no, dude, that was Charles Stross.
Nice.
I'm like, oh shit, I love his books. Damn it. Yeah. Right
on. So there were a couple other people there. I didn't talk to them as in depth as I did to Randall, but Cubicle 7 was there. So we talked a little bit about Victoriana 3rd Edition, which they're going to be finally coming out with. They were mentioning also that they're pretty excited about World War Cthulhu, and they also have a Golden Era kind of sci-fi game coming out. So they're pretty active on the RPG front, which is good to know.
Cool.
And I was pretty surprised as well that they came from England, so to go to PAX. That was pretty cool too.
I'm a little bit dubious. Well, not so much dubious. It's just I don't particularly like our chances. Us, Australia being Australia, and RPG developers being on sort of much more of a shoestring budget than say video game developers. I'm not liking my chances of too many tabletop developers coming down to Melbourne, but we can hope.
You never know. I mean, WotC, Wizards of the Coast, is probably going to be there because they love PAX.
They're everywhere. But yeah, even then, I mean, there is a local playtest team for WotC who show up to pretty much every convention. I expect to see those guys again. But yeah, I'm not sure who else will show up, sort of designer wise, who I can have a chat with and wave the Darker Days flag for.
Right on. Flames of War, they're going to be there.
Oh yeah, sure. Flames of War guys, yeah. They're a lot of fun. They're sort of their own little niche.
Right on. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure. Well, let's go over who else was at PAX East. Steve Jackson Games, they were there, demoing Munchkin, Zombie Dice, and also the new version of Ogre.
I wonder if they've worked out their box problems. Because because I didn't back that one as such, but I know a couple of my friends did, and I think it's to the best of my knowledge, I think it's been delayed because Steve Jackson is having trouble, finding a big enough box apparently to pack it all in.
Right. Yeah, I don't really know. I didn't talk to anyone at Steve Jackson Games. I just kind of wandered through, and then after the convention was over, I realized like, oh crap, I didn't go back there.
It's the sign of a good convention when there is too much to see. When you sit there and you go, holy crap, there's this awesome thing, and then there's this awesome thing, and I have to pick one.
Yeah, or there's so much stuff and you're lucky you bump into certain people because it's tough and it can be overwhelming those type of conventions. Cool. Yeah, carry on, Mike. I mean, what else? So you were talking about.
Yeah, it's just kind of going over all the different people that were there. Yeah. So as well as that, I mentioned Cubicle 7. This guy was demoing Lightweight RPG, and I didn't really get a chance to talk to him because he was busy demoing games. But it kind of piqued my interest. I'm not sure if it would be something I'm interested in because I have a lot of simple RPGs. So maybe I'll pick up a copy off of Drive-Thru RPG and check that out. Additionally, there was Reaper, and they had tons of the new Bones miniatures. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
And they also had a giant painting area where I think they were holding painting contests for the duration of the convention. So that was awesome.
God, I miss painting miniatures.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, just don't have the space all the time. It's one of those things that I'm like, when I'm old and feebled and hopefully able to retire, or should I win the lottery or whatnot? What would I do with my time? Be like, no, I would paint miniatures.
Feel sorry for James because we were talking to him last night, and obviously he backed and he's got a massive box of stuff that'll be coming to him eventually for Kingdom Death Monster, and he needs to practice painting and doesn't have time. So yeah, painting miniatures, man. But speed painting, yeah, that's another thing entirely.
Yeah.
Totally. Learn to use your spray paints and learn to use your inks.
Yep.
That would be. Cool. I'd love to. I'd love to take a crack at all that. It's just I think about this. I think about the things that I used to do as a kid. And it's like, if only I had the time to sit there and go, radio minis, let's paint you.
Well, this is why something like a new version of Necromunda and stuff like War Machine and those type of games are really good because they're essentially they're skirmish games. You've got to paint up 5 miniatures, you're done. Even then, painting 5 miniatures can seem like it take a fucking ages for it.
Once again, I live in a relatively small apartment, so I just do not have the space to start chucking paint around. So. But yeah, I would love to get back into it because I know for a lot of miniature games back in the day, sort of the lot of the enjoyment that I got from it was the painting of the miniatures. The game itself was always cool, but I really dug painting the miniatures. I mean, not sort of so much for 40k back in the day because if you're playing Space Marines like most 15-year-old boys generally end up doing. It's like you can get really bored really quickly because it's like that's a lot of Blood Angel red, and each miniature's kind of the same and they're kind of all about uniformity. So it's like God, I'm bored. But anyway, I used to look at the Tyranid players and think, oh God, that'd be fun to paint.
Tyranids are wicked. As a Tyranid player. Anyway, let's not talk any more about GW. Who else do we have there, Mike? Does that cover I think looking at your list of notes that cover the tabletop section, you've also gone.
No way. No way. We
Anyway.
still have got the indie RPG crowd. So I mentioned
There we are,
Joshua
sorry.
AC
Oh,
Newman.
yeah.
He was trying to sell me on his game Shock, which is a sci-fi game with these really funky, diametrically opposed combat resolutions, and I didn't really understand how it worked. So
Okay. What's the basis behind Shock? Just so.
it's just like a generic sci-fi game, which you could. So he was trying to show me how you could use it to portray Dune, and I was like, okay, I kind of get what you're saying here, but I don't really know how the mechanics actually work. But he was bringing up how like you could solve your political situations with either, the Prana Bindu of the Bene Gesserits, which is their weirding way, or you could use political backstabbing. That's like the diametrically opposed resolution right there. So yeah, I can't really sell you on that, but if it kind of interests you, you can check it out on his website. I also talked to what's his name, James Hargrove. Yeah, he's the guy who did Dread, the Jenga game.
Okay, yeah.
So that was kind of cool.
That thing's fantastic. I love that game.
And he was showing me his new game, which was printed on double-sided business cards. He was selling them for $1.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I also talked to SFR, who now, I don't know if they really produce, but they maintain the game Dragon Dice, which was produced by TSR back in the 90s.
Yeah. I when you said that, I was amazed when I looked at the notes. I was like, hold on a minute, what the hell? And then I had flashbacks to a copy of Arcane magazine, and yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. They're very pretty dice because they're like lots of symbols galore and colors everywhere. So yeah, what's going on with that? Are they just
They were demoing the game and they were selling product.
are they making new expansions?
I can find out right now, live on the show. Yes, they are making new expansions. They just released a new race. They also released some new Dragon Dice. So, yeah, I played the demo and got my ass kicked. So, shame on you, demo guy. You're supposed to let me win. So I like the game. But I was quite impressed.
I've seen that happen a couple of times where it's, hey, here's someone who wants to learn, and it's like, and I utterly decimate them. And it's like, great, well done.
But in his defense, he was actually showing me more advanced mechanics as he was dominating me. So, I got a better feel for the game that way.
I wonder if it's one of those games that will eventually make it the transition to, kind of like a computer version of it, like we're seeing obviously with like Magic the Gathering.
Play it on your iPhone or something.
Maybe.
There's some cool dice games on your iPhone. You can get, what is it? What's the Elder Sign dice game on there? Apparently that works.
Oh, Elder Signs is awesome. Yeah, I've got that on the tablet on Android, and the expansions are really good. I'm still stuck trying to beat Cthulhu.
No one beats Cthulhu. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Right on. And that's basically it for the tabletop area. However, in the expo hall, Privateer Press was there, and I stopped by. Saw someone being taught level 7, their new alien escape game.
Yeah.
And
what's that look like?
So basically, what it was, I only stayed for like 5 minutes watching someone get demoed on it. And what I saw was basically you roll custom dice, and if you get more symbols than your corresponding stat on your sheet, then you can complete an action. So it's one of those custom dice kind of games.
Nice.
Okay.
Yep. And you're trying to escape, and one of the cool things is it's kind of semi-cooperative because one person's a clone, and I think that clone might like accidentally start attacking you and that kind of stuff.
So does it kind of get that? It's a bit like Space Hulk in kind of style.
Maybe Space Hulk if your Terminators didn't have bolt guns.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the Privateer Press thing. It reminds me also of Hybrid, which was a board game, miniatures-based board game that Rackham brought out back in the day. I actually have a copy of. That you can't get for love nor money these days, but yeah, looks kind of cool.
Right on.
Yeah.
And then I stopped by the little register right there because they're selling product, and I was just like, "Hey, is Simon Berman here?" And they're like, "Nope." But with someone else you can interview. And I was like, don't really have questions prepared. but ended up apparently talking to Will, their director of business development, and talked about the Iron Kingdoms RPG a little bit, which he mentioned the new book is going to be coming out at Gen Con, and there's going to continue to be monthly support through No Quarter and online articles. So
yeah, I think the new book is going to be their kind of world guide. So it's the guide to each of the main kingdoms. So we're looking at Lael, Kador, Ord, and Signar, and of course the the Protectorate of Menoth. Actually, one of the things coming out this month, I know for Iron Kingdoms, it should be end of this month, I think, is the Storyteller screen. The Bring Up Iron Kingdoms, and I looked on their webpage for it, and it looks pretty sweet. So you know all the life spirals in the that they have in Hordes they have life spirals, yeah.
Yes.
They use those for the health stats on characters and big creatures in IK RPG, and they're basically having those. And I think they're supplying them with see-through plastic holders, or they're designed so that you can use dry wipe markers on the cards. Perfect. So players can mark off the health, and you can mark off the health of your NPCs and creatures. So that's kind of wicked for them to design that, because they've really thought ahead of it. It takes that, it makes them a lot more useful rather than always having to photocopy more stuff out or print stuff out or So I'm looking forward to getting that.
Right on. Good. And I also asked them if they're going to release the Iron Kingdom stuff on PDF, and he said, anything's possible?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, because they're pushing this app-based system for in-app purchases of books and so forth, because they already have War Room, which is an app-based way of buying the miniature cards and forces faction cards, and it syncs up with with your opponent if they also have the app, and that way you can track damage and so forth. But
that's not a bad idea.
I mean that's cool, but honestly, I'd rather see that expanded to say you pay for it so you can manage your NPCs and monsters and your chronicle information. Maybe that's maybe useful, but if you want the entire book, the app had better be damned good, because as much as I like using PDFs for the games, they're still not that quick to search through, and if you've got 3 or 4 books that you're looking at, so they've got a high bar to surpass, because I have no experience with what Games Workshop's doing with their books on iPad, but I'm not really interested because they're exclusive to iPad.
And I think currently they're overcharging people mainly. That's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we don't know the prices yet, do we? So maybe it's going to be $2 for the rulebook. Yeah,
you never know. It could be they could make the actual rulebook cheap because they're putting it through their own app, which is their own version of DRM. And if that means they can deliver it cheaper, then you can't complain too much, maybe. But we'll see.
That could work. That could be a good
Indeed,
trade-off.
we will see. So that was pretty much it for Privateer Press. Pretty cool dudes. I didn't do much on the expo hall, just kind of wandered around a little bit because I was mostly focused. I didn't have a lot of time because I was an enforcer, so
yeah.
The expo hall was only open for 2 hours after my shift, so I had to be pretty quick. So I went through there and just kind of wandered around, looked at some stuff, saw Dungeons & Dragons Neverwinter, which just seems like a WoW, World of Warcraft style MMO kind of thing. I was not impressed. Stopped by the CCP booth. They were demoing Dust 514. I asked some guy if he knew who Eddie Webb was, and he said nope. I asked 2 people. I'm sorry. Yeah, they had no idea, but they're from the Iceland office, so I don't think they hang out in Atlanta too much.
So what's Dust like?
It's like Call of Duty. I was not very impressed.
Oh no.
It's one of those games where you just kind of find the guy and then hold down fire until he's dead.
Yeah.
So I'm more of a Counter-Strike player. I like the twitchy, oh man, I got my sniper rifle, or boom, gotta hit the guy in the head really quick. So that did not impress me with the level of skill required.
Yeah, I don't know. I looked at Dust. Dust looks kind of cool, and it kind of it tickles, I suppose, one of my funny bones because it's I don't know, the whole concept of soldiers who download into new funky bodies. It's reminiscent of one of my favorite novels. Was it Broken Angels by Richard Morgan? But they're releasing the game on what is it? On is it? I think it's is it PC or is it just X or is it just PlayStation 3?
I think it's just PlayStation 3.
Well, there you go. So I don't own I don't own a PlayStation 3. Have no plans to buy a PlayStation 3, particularly because we are sort of right at the very
end of a cycle, yeah.
Of a so it's almost like they're getting dust out for the PlayStation 3 just as the 4 is starting to come out. So it's almost like okay.
But because it's direct download to your PS3, they'll probably release a PS4 version as well. So I think people will keep playing.
And it's free to play. I don't know. It'll be supported by in-app purchases or something.
That's exactly how to do it.
Not quite sure how the hell they make any money out of it. Anyway.
I guess the thing that you can't really tell from the demo or the demo at the convention is how you mostly. It's very hard to get a feel how that game integrates with the EVE universe and what goes on in there, because the two are meant to be kind of these synchronous games.
Yeah,
at least that's what I remember from it. So it's hard to get.
That's a really cool concept, and I really like that idea. But it's just, I just don't quite know how they're going to get away from I'm playing a console FPS, and I'm about to be utterly dominated by a 15-year-old from Wisconsin who is screaming racial epithets down me over voice chat. So that's what kind of kept me off Halo. That's kind of what keeps me off most online shooters, and just just stick to the single player game because I just kind of don't need that.
Yeah.
Right on. And moving on from CCP, I walked around, saw my friend What a Travesty 22 in the most awkward time possible because there was just 3 girls fawning at him. So that was awkward. And then moving along, I stopped by Castle Story. So I backed their Kickstarter, which means I got a free hug. So some big Quebecois guy gave me a hug.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think that was pretty much it for the expo hall as well. I, again, wasn't in there too much because, you can play games, that are going to be coming out in a couple months. You can play the demos, that kind of stuff. And I usually don't do that because I don't want to wait online for 90 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
So that means that there's a lot of stuff at the convention that I just kind of skipped over, at least on the expo hall. And I also saw some pretty cool panels. One of them that was interesting from an RPG standpoint was one by Luke Crane, who does the Burning Wheel RPG, and Jared Sorensen, who does the Parsley games. He also does Lacuna, which is a sort of time travel game. And that panel was RPGs are awesome. And just to kind of get down to the meat of it, they're basically talking about decision making in RPGs and how that can kind of influence game design and how the games are played. And they broke it up into basically 5 aspects of decision making, which are tactical decisions. So that's like your, D&D map sheet combat, that kind of thing. Moral decisions, which are moral, you run into a bunch of goblin babies. Are you going to kill them? That kind of thing. Emotional decisions, which are... I don't even know what a good example is right now. We'll just skip that one. Avatar, which is based on what would your character do, that kind of thing. So everything from alignments to Virtue and Vice and New World of Darkness. And then social decision making, which in many ways is actually kind of meta. They're discussing am I going to piss off this character, this player at the table, and that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah.
So one cool thing they did was they took an old Dungeons and Dragons character sheet and they kind of divided it up into what different aspects on the sheet represented. So it was mostly tactical stuff, your armor, your weapons, but also avatar and moral as well. So that was kind of a cool way to demonstrate it. And they went through a couple examples, that sort of thing. And it was interesting. The entire basis for this panel was Luke had been reading through a game design book, like a text. And one of the authors basically said that RPGs do not fit their definition of a game. And
Okay.
they were also kind of basically saying, like, maybe it's not really a game, which he thought was BS. And therefore...
Oh, this gets back to, like, all the big game and whether a role-play game is a simulationist narrative or storytelling and all that kind of forged terminology and stuff,
yeah, so actually, I kind of mentioned this in the notes, you might see. I like I call it teams, which they didn't come up with. It's just tactical, moral, emotional, avatar, social. You can rearrange those letters into the teams acronym. So that decision-making basis, I think, is actually very useful for game design. GNS theory that you're mentioning, which is gamism, narrativism, and simulationism, that's just a classification system. That basically is just saying, like, okay, this D&D is obviously simulationist. You're simulating tabletop combat. I don't think that's really good for game design. It's more like something you can use after a game has been created. I don't really know how you go out and say, I'm going to make a narrativist game. Like, so what does that mean? You can't really classify something before you've created it.
Yeah, it's more sort of useful if, I don't know, if you're sort of maybe doing academic analysis after the fact.
Right. And that's really what it was meant for, I think. But it was good. So as much as I denigrate GNS theory, and it's also fallen out of favor. I mean, this is like this is from like a decade ago.
Yeah.
It really did get people to start thinking about this kind of stuff. And a lot of the more modern RPG analysis theories and ideas have kind of grown out of that. So it was overall a good thing. But that is kind of what they were discussing. I'll have to check if it's on YouTube, and maybe I'll link it, because some people do record their presentations. Oh, and Luke Crane said that White Wolf is gone, which is basically true, and then he said that Onyx Path and White Wolf need to use Kickstarter to revive their World of Darkness brand, which I thought was a very questionable thing to say. I think that the brand itself has been quite strong, but perhaps he disagrees. He actually works for Kickstarter, so I don't really want to challenge him too much on it.
I wouldn't say. I would say Kickstarter is enabling for Onyx Path to explore alternative publishing methods. In other words, to break out of the traditional publishing cycle, which is you make a game, you pay some people up front to make a game, and then you have to also then have the money to press this metric ton of dead wood, and then you've got to hope that you can ship the whole lot of it, and then hope that you make enough money back so you can then keep the treadmill, as Rich Thomas and anyone has ever said. Classic White Wolf was the treadmill of make another book so you can then make another book so you can make another book. Whereas now, Kickstarter changes that thing. Whereas you find out who wants this book, how bad do you want it, and if you want it bad, we can make this book bloody awesome. So, I'm well excited to get Mummy. Like, they were going to make Mummy one way or another, but the fact that we're going to get this ultra cool version of Mummy, which is, glossy and has gold edged pages and a bookmark and everything, then hell yeah. So
we also get like 12 free PDFs with it, so that's pretty sweet too.
Absolutely. This guy sounds like he's talking out of his ass, mate. I don't know.
I think he was really just exaggerating to prove a point.
Yes. I think if anything, he's just trying to say how successful Kickstarter is in certain aspects, and obviously, I think it's fair to say that possibly Onyx Path and the White Wolf brand of World of Darkness kind of gives a good example of how roleplay games have taken advantage of Kickstarter to change their publishing kind of methods.
Reeling it back a little bit, I mean, I think they can start talking about brand recognition and all that sort of guff when it finally gets time to release the MMO, and they can, I'm interested to see how Onyx Path are going to try to capitalize on the MMO when that gets released. Will they say, here's the MMO and here's the game, which we've been publishing through Kickstarter for the last how many couple of years. But, I think that question will pop up once the MMO is ready to release. But
right on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. What else did I do that day? Another RPG thing is that Sofer, who was one of the people I was working with at the Wyvern Theater, had this game called Jade Claw, which he described as the furry RPG.
I'm just about aware of it, yeah.
Okay, I hadn't been, but now I know it exists. Played some game called Unexploded Cows, which I was completely destroyed because I was doing a lot of table talk, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna totally own you with my cow. So people started attacking me because they thought I knew what I was doing. That tends to happen sometimes.
Bovine trash talking.
Pretty much. Okay, that's it for Friday. On the Saturday, that's when I was doing all the tabletop stuff. And, we also played Wild West. Or no, that's not the name of it. But Jared Sorensen's Wild West Parsley game. Are either of you familiar with Parsley games?
What exactly is a parsley game, man?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think so. All right. So, maybe we can play one right now.
Oh, God, really?
Okay. Now loading Action Castle. You are in a room. Exits are north and south.
Okay.
I checked my inventory.
You check your inventory. Your inventory is empty. Now, Peter, you get to go. It's your turn.
I attack Chris.
I don't understand attack Chris. All right, Chris, now it's your turn.
Oh, it's one of those.
I go north.
You go north. You're in a clearing. There is a well. Exits are south and east.
I look down the well.
You see a well. It's very deep.
I push Chris in.
I don't understand. I push Chris in. So that's basically a parsley game. So this one was Wild West themed. And
okay, so it's very much like a classic, sort of kind of like a text-based...
Yeah, it's like King's Quest and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's a text-based adventure.
The text-based games we used to play very much back in the day.
Yeah, so it's pretty awesome when you get we had 50 people in line. You get up to the line, you'd be like, all right, I go east. Or, I try to shoot the guy. And it's like, oh, you got killed. That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely pretty fun. And I just realized that would be tons of fun to do online as well. I actually just got Action Castle through the Tabletop Day free bundle on DriveThruRPG, so I can run that now.
Oh, wow. Stick it on the G Plus or something.
Right on. And then I went to sleep after that. Oh, no, so I'm not even going to talk about that, whatever. All right, went to sleep, and then Sunday, I basically just worked the entire day, and it was probably my best day ever at PAX. I was in uniform from 9 to 5, and what was going on between the satellite theaters is we had nothing to do on Sunday, so we were just making little stickers with tape and trying to plant it on each other's signs. And then someone realized that Wyvern Theater, the one that I was at, had 2 signs, so someone made a $20 bounty to try to steal one of our signs. So there's just enforcers constantly around us trying to grab it. Eventually they did, and then we're just having it all around the convention. Just people were posing and taking photos with it, and it was pretty ridiculous. But we eventually did get back at Phoenix Theater, who were the ones that stole it, by pretty much just graffitiing and defacing the theater. It was awesome.
Nice. So you had an opportunity to be mischievous.
Pretty much. We enforcers, of course, are very professional and, always take our job seriously. We just basically had nothing to do at that point.
Yeah, fair enough.
So that was pretty much PAX. Of course, there was an enforcer after party, which is awesome. Got to do some bowling, play some pool, and that kind of stuff. So that was pretty good. And
sounds pretty great.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, I was looking. I was I was wondering, I guess there isn't really much said about whether there'll be a PAX Europe of any form, or where.
They currently have their 4th PAX. So they have PAX Prime in Seattle. They have PAX East in Boston. They have PAX Dev also in Seattle, which is just for developers. Press are not allowed at all.
Okay.
And now they're having PAX Oz because there's not enough good conventions in Australia.
Damn straight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if they're going to start up a Europe one. It's possible. We'll have to see. I mean, there's definitely a lot of enforcers that are from from Europe. I ran into some people from England when I was enforcing. So people make the trip, and I guess it would be pretty cool if they could have a PAX over there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't imagine that would be too far in the future. Eventually they're going to want to do a PAX Europe, I reckon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's definitely possible. So, any other questions about PAX or what?
So, as a first time PAX goer, what do you recommend? I sort of, are there any do's and don'ts you think I should keep in mind?
Okay, so first off, go to the keynote.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, get there early, get online, go to the keynote. Okay, and then directly after the keynote is a Q&A with Mike and Jerry, the Penny Arcade people, and you're gonna love that.
Yeah, I'll do that. Absolutely. I got up at 3 a.m. and watched the Q&A live.
Nice.
Because they were streaming it, so it was one of those. Yep, we're officially in the future moments where I got up at 3 a.m., sat on my couch, pulled out my iPhone, and watched live an event that was going on the other side of the planet.
Yes.
It's one of those moments where you go, yep, we're in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you definitely want to do that. I mean, Peter, you're more of a tabletop guy, correct?
I love me some tabletop, but no, dude, I'm video games. I'm everything. So
Okay, right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely do not get stuck online to play a demo for something that's going to be out in a couple months. It's never worth it, ever.
Yeah.
Tabletop is awesome. They have a tabletop library, so you can just check out games, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully there will be, companies there. Maybe Wizards will be running some stuff.
I'm going with a group of my friends, so I imagine it will be sort of a what does the group want to do. I'm not just kind of lone wolfing it.
Mm-hmm.
So we will probably just sort of try and do everything as a group. So I think we'll probably be avoiding the sort of let's stand in line and play a single player game. It'll be more a case of okay, let's go to the tabletop demo place and see what we can play as a group.
Right on. And I'm a huge fan of panels, so definitely check that out. Oh, if look for Rim and Scott, the Geek Nights. See if they're doing a panel, because I first experienced that at my first PAX East, and I've become a huge fan of theirs, so I definitely recommend them.
Yeah.
And I know they're going to be at PAX East, so...
Panels are fun. I've seen them go bad, or I've seen them.
Yeah.
I was at AussieCon, which was the World Science Fiction Convention when they brought it to Melbourne, and I was in this panel with a former Star Trek Next Gen staff writer who was trying to convince us all the reason why the first couple of seasons of Next Gen were bad, it was all because the actors were terrible. And I just remember kind of thinking, what terrible actors? What you mean, like what Sir Patrick Stewart?
Yeah, right.
And it was like, because I was thinking, and I was sort of thinking, of course she's going to blame Will Wheaton for Wesley. And it's right, the 14-year-old kid, the fact that his character sucked, that was all his fault, was it?
Yeah.
So I kind of called that out, and then I got up and left. Anyway.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, they definitely... PAX usually has pretty good panels. They have an entire department which schedules them and handles that kind of stuff. So of course use your judgment when you're looking at the schedule and find some good stuff. And if you're stuck online for a panel, I don't know how it's going to be at PAX East, but the first PAX East was nuts. You would just get on a line and be like, I don't know what this line is for, but hopefully it's good.
Yeah, we'll see. It has. I know that PAX Australia has completely sold out, but I'm not quite sure what exactly that means in terms of the actual number of attendees. It is. I know it is at the Melbourne. It is at Melbourne Showgrounds. I know they can only hold a certain number of people, so we will see. And also, it's the first one, so hopefully. So I imagine what will happen, which is pretty much what happens with all these things, is that the first one's kind of small, and then then it blows up every year as it goes on, as people come away and go, oh my god, that was awesome. Pretty much. Yeah.
So I mean, just check it out, have a good time, talk to the enforcers and see what they have to say. They might know of some cool panels or some cool secret spots where there's good stuff to do. So
nice. Yeah. Cool.
Should be awesome. My first PAX was my best until this most recent one. So
yeah. And of course, the usual things. Yeah, pack deodorant. Pack extra deodorant. Pack deodorant that you can give away to other people.
Yeah.
And I'll see if I can avoid the con crud. You didn't pick up a dose of the con crud this year, did you?
A little bit, but so at PAX, here, pro tip: don't shake anyone's hand.
Yeah.
Use your elbows and just be like, "Yo, dog, elbows, bam."
Bam.
That really helps a lot.
Yeah, I'll try that, and I'll keep the hand sanitizer in every
Yeah, that
proportion.
too.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay. I think that's enough PAX.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think we're good. Chris, do we want to talk about Mummy a little bit?
Yeah.
I seem to remember we were a White Wolf, slash World of
Yeah.
Darkness podcast.
World of Darkness 2.0.
So obviously, as we said earlier, with the news, Mummy is finally released on general sale, and the one thing which we steered clear of in the previous Darker Days, I think it's the previous Darker Days. I've lost track of what
44.
we've done. Yeah, with Colin, is we steered clear of talk of Mummy the Curse crossed over with the other elements of World of Darkness. And in the run-up to that interview, we obviously had I think we had a good 3 weeks of reading the book and kind of reading about the various factions in it and creatures. And the thing that keeps sticking out like a sore thumb was some of the absolute similarities between elements of Mummy the Curse with other parts of New World of Darkness. And, here we are, the next show on from Talking with Colin, and he's not here, so we can talk about crossover, finally. Now, Pete, just so we can obviously, we can get you involved in the discussion. How much do you know of Mummy the Curse? Did you back it? Did you get a copy from Kickstarter or anything like that?
I'm very, very sorry, but I know practically next to nothing. I know what was discussed. I've taken a little bit of a look at it.
Okay, cool.
I just I'm not super hot for mummies, and I just did not have the extra cash floating around for I'm floating around to back it. I was kind of holding off for Hunters Hunted.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Okay, so for people that hopefully listened to the last show, but as a brief summary, so as a mummy, you're playing a being that was empowered through mummification by this nameless empire, a precursor empire to the Egyptian dynasties, and they pledge their soul to the judges of the Duat, and are able to come back every so often, whether they're summoned by their cults or by the Sothic cycle, and they're basically tasked with performing tasks allotted by their judges, of which there are about 42 of, to collect and bring back into the Duat, which I guess you could consider as part of the underworld, because the Duat is the Egyptian underworld, relics ranging in power and magnitude. And these relics, if they're not claimed, cause certain havoc in the real world. And mummies claim them to align them properly to absorb their sekhem. And the problem for mummies is that they're constantly battling their task that they're allotted with their own desires as a person. And when they awaken from their sleep, they are very high in sekhem, which you can basically their power rating thing is very equivalent to like blood potency or the equivalents from the other splats. They start at 10, and through gameplay it diminishes, and as it diminishes, it makes it easier for a mummy to have more free will. So there's sort of this kind of race against time. The sandglass, is always diminishing in amount of time that they can do things for themselves. And of course, within the mummy setting, there are other things. There are these Amkhata, which are chimerical creatures that can be either created by mummies or other people that are aware of the magic of the Nameless Empire. And these are like taking the head of one animal and the body of another, and you're able to create this new creature that exists as a spirit, but also can make into the real world by devouring sekhem. Mummies themselves, of course, are corpses that are empowered by sekhem to look mortal once again, and through certain things can show how they're not mortal, that they're these empowered corpses. And when you really look at the host of different creatures and antagonists and the mummies themselves, there's a lot of similarity and crossover to games like Vampire the Requiem, Mage the Awakening, obviously with Werewolf the Forsaken, Geist the Sin Eaters, and Hunter the Vigil, and potentially even with games such as Changeling and with Promethean.
Yep.
So, Mike, where do you want to start with disentangling all of this, like the crossover? What's the most obvious thing as crossover?
Promethean.
Promethean, okay.
Straight up. So,
okay.
I mean, Chris, you remember me just like randomly G-chatting you all the time, just be like,
yeah.
Holy crap. Mummy and Promethean.
Oh, yes.
2 peas in a pod.
I think the thing that started that was because we were talking about these chimerical creatures, the Amkata, and how they are created creatures and that are empowered, and of course from corpses of other creatures. You know, it's glorified taxidermy. And Promethean essentially operates in the same way. You know, someone creates a corpse, be it a Promethean or some other person, and it is awakened and empowered, and you know, Azoth makes it alive because it doesn't have a soul.
Right.
And yeah, there's so much similarity there.
Yeah, well, even just on more macro scale, with Promethean, you have a demiurge who takes a body and gives it new life through a ritual. And really the same thing with Mummy. You have, back in the Nameless City, the mummies would go in, a ritual would be performed, and they'd have a new life as one of the deathless.
Yes.
So that in itself is quite telling. You, of course, have in Promethean, you have the Osirans, who are the water element Prometheans in their alchemical nature. And they are Egyptian-based and really match up with the mummies quite well.
It hints at that I mean, obviously, I need to open up the Mummy PDF to give the right terms. But so in the Nameless Empire, you had this kind of sorcerer kind of sorcerer kings, the lords of the empire, who used the ritual of return. I think that's the right name of it. To create the mummies out of their servants. Their servants falling into 5/6 guilds. And it's interesting to think that whatever ritual it is that they use to create the mummies has persisted in some manner down the ages, which may explain the origin of Prometheans, maybe.
Perhaps, but we also know that quite definitely the spell of life for the deathless, for the mummies, does not involve Pyros.
No.
So we could be fairly certain that it is something different, but it does seem to and it also makes a different kind of being. As we were discussing last night, I was trying to argue that really we have 3 kinds of mummies. We have the deathless, who are the mummies in Mummy the Curse that you play. There's the lifeless, which are the variety of kind of spin-off mummies. And then there's also the soulless, which are the Prometheans, because they indeed lack a soul.
It's quite interesting because obviously the other crossover you get, and is a very obvious crossover, and it comes from Secrets of the Ruined Temple for Mage the Awakening. That's where the first citations, first reference to this Nameless Empire occurs. So the creators of the mummies in Mummy the Curse are also potentially a group of mages that did not reside in Atlantis, which is equally interesting. And so, you know, there's that opens up so many more things. And the Amkata are very similar in some respects to Pandorans. So there's so much to delve with. The other thing in Mummy is the fact that mummies have cults that persist through the ages, and every so often summon the mummy back to be awake and to help them in some task other than what the judges have in mind for that particular mummy. And the one thing that Mummy the Curse doesn't actually really say anything about, but you can see some obvious crossovers. There's nothing preventing mummies having cults that are not just mortals, but there could be other, supernatural beings within their cult. So I don't see why there's no reason why you cannot have, say, a cult of Mechet vampires from Vampire the Requiem as members of this cult, especially because the Mechet, if you go to their clan book, have mystery cults themselves, and their own history dates back to Egypt as well. So there's a very obvious crossover there. And of course, fortunately, in New Order Darkness, various supernatural beings have no immediate reason to hate each other. So, there's no reason why vampires could not get something good out of the deal by being every so often the servants to this monumentally powerful supernatural being.
Indeed. And I've been thinking a little bit about how to cross over, say, Mummy and Vampire, and maybe also Mummy and Promethean. And I think the key might actually be the memory trait.
Okay.
Because vampires have their own issues in Vampire the Requiem with memory.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also very interesting ideas with playing around with the memories of Prometheans, because they're a new being, but perhaps there's memories trapped in there from the past body that they now inhabit, which may be a key to opening up their true personality.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be something interesting to play with. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work, because, of course, the mummy's memories pertain to the Nameless City and his other awakenings throughout the ages.
But that's kind of useful for the mummy if he has at least a vampire may have some way of at least helping with the recovery of those memories from a particular age if they were both active at that same time. That makes it a really interesting relationship. You've got these two beings that could leapfrog through time together, but in very different ways. That's really interesting.
Well, I can't really take credit for it, because that comes from Mummy First Edition from the Old World of Darkness. The vampire and the mummy that were basically friends throughout the ages.
Of course, the other thing I was thinking that crosses over immediately with Mummy is that Clan Mechet have a method for embracing corpses that they've that are not. So obviously, normally the embrace of a vampire is of a person that is immediately drained of blood and then fed, vitae. But the Mechet have a method that they can actually embalm a corpse and then embrace it later. And of course, what's that very similar to?
Yep, just like a mummy.
Or a Promethean. So,
yes.
That makes it kind of interesting. And the other games we've been thinking about crossover, because of course, in the Mummy the Cursed book, there are plenty of new powers, Newman, for ghosts. And of course, the other group that makes use of ghosts is Geist the Sin Eaters. And the question then is, can Sin Eaters, who are quite able to open Avernian gates and access the underworld, are they able to access the Duat? Because the Duat performs a particular role for mummies. It's a place where they basically reside when their body is asleep, between when they're awake in the real world. But also when a mummy dies, when I use the word die, I mean they take hideous amounts of damage and their soul for a moment of time is cut off from their body, has to go to the Duat and face Anubis. And there's some sort of revelation that they have, and eventually they make it back to their body. But it'd be very interesting to understand, or at least explore, how Sin Eaters can also interact with mummies, especially if that there may be parts of the Nameless City which are accessible to Sin Eaters because they're able to open Avernian gates to very deep parts of the underworld.
Yes. I would argue that, yes, a Sin Eater can get to Duat, because it's definitely canonically in the underworld. It's just in a very strange location. The issue is that the judges don't want them there. It's a place where really the mummies are most vulnerable. And if you ever needed to destroy a mummy, that's where you would go. You'd get a Sin Eater, or maybe vampires as well can enter Avernian gates, as we know from Book of the Dead.
Pretty much anyone can get in.
Yes. It's just, not really a good idea for them. Yeah, so it's definitely where they're most vulnerable, and I think that the judges would have some way to try to keep them out or destroy them once they enter.
Mm. And that really questions then whether the judges are kind of similar in some way to the Caraboi of Ghosts and Eaters. So the Caraboi are these kind of the ghost. I say ghost. They're kind of like the ghostly spirit psychopomps lords of these underworld domains. So that's kind of interesting. The other thing that would be very interesting is the fact that this is one of the ways that I view how to run, and I will run Geist Sanitas in the near future. Is that Geist Sanitas is kind of like it's a very, you can run as a procedural kind of police investigative game, much like Vampire the Requiem. But the thing is that in Geist, the people you would interview, the people you would ask questions, are not just the living, but also the dead. And maybe also some of the people you want to talk to, some of the dead you want to talk to, are witnesses from another time who are, trapped dead in some underworld domain because, of course, they've lost their attachment to the real world. Now, what if certain relics that a mummy requires have been destroyed in the real world, but they have an underworld reflection, and that's the way to gain hold of them? So there's potentially crossover there, that a mummy needs a geist to help them to recover a relic which would otherwise be lost.
I like it.
Or, working along the same idea, maybe the relic, though destroyed, still exists in some form in I would say, a alternative dimension or astral realm, which is accessible by, say, a mage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or it's stuck in someone's dream, and so they have to talk to a changeling. Which leads us on to another thing, talking of changelings. What else is similar to Prometheans, and similar to mummies, and similar to other created beings? And that's fetches. Because again, fetches is something that's created from various things and empowered, and it doesn't have a soul, yet is, for all intents and purposes, human. Which I think, in our discussion, Mike, on a G chat, really led us to the thing that a lot of these games get at, is that once you're either not human or you try to make a human, the thing that's always difficult to put in there or to maintain is the soul. So, right. A vampire is corrupted in some way and has to feed on vitae. A Promethean has no soul and is seeking Azoth and is seeking to refine and distill its Azoth to create a soul. A mummy has a soul, but again, it's damaged, and I would say damaged or controlled by the judges, and so Sechem is something that forces them to do things and limits them. Changelings, obviously, their souls being screwed about with by the gentry, and a part of the weird now replaces their soul. And what other game am I thinking of? And in Mage, of course, mages of course have souls. They're awakened, but the Tremere, who are a group of left-handed path mages, their soul is of course corrupted and broken. The only way to maintain their soul is to feed on others. So there's this definite theme of souls being broken or manipulated, and this idea that you have to somehow maintain it to gain freedom.
Yes, Dark Days Radio and the Nature of the Soul.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other crossover stuff that we got. So obviously Ghosts. I mean, the thing that I'm looking at possibly running is a Ghosts and Eaters game that's going to feature Mummy the Curse type antagonists, and of course I'm looking at kind of stuff from Mage as well, because of course you can have Ghost Mages, the Ghost of Mages, which are quite horrific. Any other thoughts, Mike, on crossover material and what you could use? Hunter the Vigil, we haven't really said much about. And of course, other kind of like things to do with... oh, damn, I can't think of the name of it. What's the name in Mummy the Curse of the pharmaceutical company?
Oh, shit.
Shit.
Yeah. Okay, wait, I
Yeah.
have the PDF open.
Woohoo!
Open up the PDF. I was actually gonna ask Chris, are
Yeah,
you
sure.
are you crazy enough to try and cross over any of Mummy the Curse into classic World of Darkness?
Um, if I was me, I would actually be inclined to completely replace Mummy the Resurrection with Mummy the Curse.
Yeah.
Totally write them out and put them in because think they have a, I think they have a stronger idea because they're less tied to the grand meta plot and
Yeah,
less
yeah.
intrinsically tied to vampire in the sense that, oh, we hate Set, where obviously we hate every vampire going. And I think it really kind of opens up the scope of what you can do with Mummy in classic World of Darkness. So I think there's a lot of strength there. I mean, is there anything in particular you would say from old World of Darkness that would be quite interesting to mix with Mummy the Curse in the sense of what we've already talked about?
I got
Well, I
something
mean,
for you.
hang on,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Well, just think about it. So these mummies only wake up for a short amount of time, and well, what's one of the core elements of the classic World of Darkness but the end of the world? So they
Yeah.
have this finite amount of time that they're awake, and they need to get something done, or as much done as possible before they go to sleep, because they don't know if they're going to be able to wake up again.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes a really strong kind of concept there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the idea that was sort of come to me would be, well, what if you because a big theme of, well, particularly Vampire the Masquerade is always, you have the Antediluvians and you have, a bunch of incredibly powerful Methuselah who are all sleeping, and when they wake up, shit is going to get real. Well, the idea is, what if you have, say, oh geez, even the Black Hand, they think they're sitting on an antediluvian, they're actually sitting on a mummy, or you can tie them into, of course, the followers of Set, where you have, well, Set's back, and well, he's not a vampire as such. He's a mummy from Mummy the Curse. That sort of stuff you could play with quite well.
Yeah, that'd be
I think
awesome.
it's quite interesting when you talk about Mummy the Curse maybe mixed with World of Darkness, because of course the one thing you don't see in old World of Darkness, in classic World of Darkness, and that was one of the key features of Mummy the Curse, is that the fact is a new mummy in Mummy the Curse starts out with monumental powers, and so to
Yeah.
imagine that the Sothic cycle ties in with the coming end of the world. So all these mummies wake up, say, a few years or a year before, the Red Star and the eventual end of the world, and so you've got a bunch of vampires who think they're all badasses, and then suddenly everywhere these mummies wake up, who are wielding like world destroying powers, because some of the powers in Mummy the Curse are summon meteor. So, for example, and so for a vampire to go, shit, it's like we were worried about the antediluvians, and we've got these guys.
Yeah. You
I
could
think,
even be. Yeah. All right, boys. Gehenna's been cancelled.
yeah,
you could put the mummies in. They're the guys who put down Ravnos during the week of nightmares.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that obviously Mummy the Curse doesn't have, that Mummy the Resurrection did have, of course, is mummies from other parts of the world. Now,
Yeah.
fortunately, New World of Darkness is kind of open in the fact that mummies, the term mummy is very broad. So not all mummies are the Arisen, but the Arisen are mummies. And this is something that's going to be expanded upon in some other of the books that come out from Mummy the Curse, because they're kind of like covering kind of the classic kind of Bane mummies and other types of mummies like that. So there's definitely things you can import, because I'm still kind of interested in like how you would tie into New World of Darkness, like the mummies of and into Mummy the Curse, like the mummies of like Central America with Mayans and Aztecs, or the mummification that you would get that would occur in, say, due to, I think it was Buddhist monks, mummifying themselves by eating in a particular way and starving themselves and basically desiccating themselves, and kind of things like, even though it's an awful film, the third Mummy film, which is the Dragon Emperor, and so I think there's still more stuff that you could tie into Mummy the Curse, and of course that leads us on to another book in New World of Darkness, which is which I haven't actually read. Is it Immortals? Yeah, that has other ways of immortality, and I think they have other types of. They cover other like mummies in there. Oh, and of course, I can imagine that many of the groups in, not many, but I imagine certain groups in Hunt of the Vigil would have issues with mummies themselves and that company. I think of what it's called.
Last Dynasty International.
Yeah, they take relics and they take mummies and things, and they get the second out of it to make interesting pharmaceuticals, and I think that would cross over with some of the groups in Hunt of the Vigil quite well, because again, there's certain groups in Hunt of the Vigil that have an interest in stealing and using for their own purposes the powers and abilities and organs of other supernatural entities.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'm just about spent on mummy crossover ideas.
Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot more, but I think it would take me a bit of gameplay to kind of play about with these ideas. I think that's basically our kind of like our brain explosion of what we've been keeping back from the last show.
Right. Yep.
But there's definitely a lot to do, and it's very interesting to talk about like Mummy the Curse in relation to Old World of Darkness. Any closing things then?
Yeah, I got something. Peter Marshall, you're back at your computer now.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry.
Hey, I ran World of Darkness Gypsies. Bro.
Oh yeah, cool.
You did very well. Yeah. I've only listened to the first half of it. I think I put some money on the table, didn't I?
You did, but don't worry about that. Don't worry about that.
Fair enough.
Give it to you know what? Give something to Child's Play. Buy some cookies from the Cookie Brigade at PAX, and that'll be awesome.
I will give something to Child's Play. I was more than happy to donate to the. I was going to donate to the charity of your choice. That was the plan with the money anyway. So sure, no problems.
There we go.
And speaking about Google Hangout games, I am just about prepared to run Cthulhu Tech.
Yes.
So
Nice.
this is basically me as I'll be running as a kind of the Office of Internal Security. Think X-Files, but mixed with a bit of technocracy style. And of course, they have to run kind of information interference both against the enemy and in the general population. And they have the horrible jobs of hunting down the monsters and the sorcerers and the parapsychics and the cults that exist in the arcologies in the Cthulhu Tech dystopian cyberpunk Cthulhuid world. So that's looking good fun. So again, that's the idea of kind of just it gives us a chance to actually for me to run it, for us to play it and show how it can be run, to get kind of like the theme and moods of it. And it's also an opportunity to look at the Cthulhu Tech material and kind of, as Mike and I and others have been doing, is sanitizing some of the concepts. Because
I was going to say, are you going to stick with framework, or are you going to mix things up?
Yeah, I think that's the first thing, Mike. I'm not running framework, am I?
You can do whatever you want for this, but I've got my own crazy plans in the background to try to replace the system.
If you want to try the replacement system, I'm willing to do it.
It's not done.
But this is the thing though. I mean, if you're not kind of involving the crazy mechs and stuff, could you just port it over to New World of Darkness quite easily? I mean, what kind of funky powers would the characters have that you would need to replicate? Not
many.
Really.
I doubt many. It depends what type of pre-gen characters will do. I mean, I think it's just because of I think we'll stick with framework. I mean, the whole problem with framework, it has some weird statistics in there, as Mike has wonderful spreadsheets on.
Yes.
And But yeah, I mean, the main thing is, I think we're looking at is just kind of like suggesting a better system for it in future when we cover it on a Darker Days Darkling, and eventually a PDF about changes to the setting to just to make certain more
make it a
sensible.
little less rapey, yeah.
Yeah, and a little less hokey in places because there's some good stuff there, but the reasoning behind some of the things being done is a little bit feels a little bit too happenstance, and the ideas incorporating in make it feel a bit more nuanced or like everything is just one big clusterfuck.
Yeah.
And yeah, that'll be good to do. And
Yeah.
we can
As I proved to Chris last night, you can play Harry Dresden in Cthulhu Tech. Like, straight up.
You love that guy. You love Harry Dresden.
Freaking hate Dresden Files, mate.
Not in Cthulhu Tech, though.
Yeah. That in particular is like what I mean by there's some hokey shit in there. And it's kind of like I think some valid comparison that can be done is trying to get in some of the thought processes in how you would run a Unhallowed Metropolis game into a Cthulhu Tech game. Because there's all this massive stuff with, Cthulhu's coming and Haster's about, and there's all this massive war going on. But how much depending upon what scale of game you're playing, how much of that information is common knowledge and how much of it is not? And what is
absolutely
due to that? Is it constantly within the game, or is it the backdrop? I think these are things that Cthulhu Tech didn't, in the core book, did not reinforce. It's definitely a game that could do with a revised edition to kind of
it up
and make it.
I kind of feel like like Cthulhu Tech kind of missed its calling as background for a really awesome miniature game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to do a bit of that, and then the other thing I've got coming up will be which I'm writing as a kind of a SAS light, and this ties into Forgotten Lore 5, which we're trying to. I've already got one submission, so send us stuff. I have no theme for the issue, and trying to do a theme for the issue seems to be more effort than it's worth. So I'm doing I'm writing a lightweight version of a SAS, because obviously a SAS is a very involved thing to write. A World of Darkness Mortals game, which is kind of based on my hometown with a few things, mixed in. So think Hot Fuzz with horror.
Nice, awesome.
Yeah.
You and I still need to get together and discuss Fading Suns, don't we?
Well, I think that's something we definitely need to organise very soon because there's nothing new on the Fading Suns front, so we may as well wax lyrical about how it's great.
Yeah, third edition is whatever they're calling it. Revised edition is out.
It's
such.
I call it no effort edition.
Oh, really?
Have you looked at the PDF for it?
No, I haven't. I haven't had a chance. I got very little spare cash right now.
It's very poor layout. I looked at I got a copy of it, and obviously it's very poorly. I mean, the layout, there's no effort put into it, and I think the only thing they fixed was how you botch in Fading Suns, because in Fading Suns it's a D20.
Yeah.
And if you roll a 1, you're screwed, and of course, no matter how skilled you are, you'll screw up quite often. They kind of massaged that area of the rules, which is fair enough. But that's all they've done. They haven't really done much else to it. So
okay, sure.
I kind of run Fading Suns. So it's like Unhallowed Metropolis. So I use a 2d10 because that obviously means that you've got a nice bell curve.
Yeah, good point there. Actually, yeah.
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 Anyway, so things to look forward to from Darker Days.
Straight up. Okay. I think we need to close up this episode. Of course, you can check out Darker Days on Facebook at Darker Days on Facebook, Darker Days Radio. And we also have our G Plus community, which is Darker Days Radio on G Plus. Check that out, definitely. Of course, we're going to have Cthulhu Tech coming up. Andrew Bampton, who played Brother Jeremiah in the Gypsies game, he's going to be running a Gargoyles game using V20 rules, and I think it's Dark Ages setting, so
cool.
Should be awesome.
Okay.
Of course, on Twitter, we are at Darker Days Radio as well. And if you want to send us an email, do darkerdaysradio@gmail.com.
That's the email also to send any submissions for Forgotten Lore. So basically, submissions should be anything from, well, NPCs and pre-generated characters, story hook ideas and adventures. Try and keep them kind of like SAS, but kind of smaller. Or artifacts, relics, spells, new rules, or even short stories. And I will attempt to edit them with help from people who are more skilled at the English language than even me. I have more time. Yeah, so it's pretty rocking.
Definitely. All right, Chris, thank you very much. Peter as well. Awesome episode. Maybe I'm going to go back while I'm editing and actually do a secret frequency. I don't know.
You crazy fool.
Maybe.
Yeah, why not? We'll come up with something.
Right on. All right, everyone. I think that's it. Good night. I hit the record button, but we're not really discussing anything yet. And let's fuck it. Let's just do this.
Yeah.
Let's just get her done. And we go live in 3, 2, 1. Fuck, wait, what am I supposed to do? Okay, we go live in 3, 2, 1.